We essentially flipped our previous model around, and rather than providing data for customers to decipher on their own, our team provided the data analytics and analysis in-house to identify specific buildings that exhibited energy usage outside of the typical norm, what we would expect for that type of environment and operating conditions, and then delivered personalized energy consulting, which is all paid for by the utility partners to asset and owners and occupants of those buildings.
Hello, and welcome to this special episode of the REIT Report. I'm Jessica Long, Senior Vice President of Environmental Stewardship and Sustainability at Nareit. And today I am joined by Bridget Bray, Director of Partnerships with Power TakeOff. And as many of you know, in the real estate sustainability industry, we've been very focused on energy efficiency and driving investment in building energy-related projects. So this is a really special opportunity to connect the REIT community with free resources that are available through Power TakeOff's virtual commissioning program. And I'm excited to have Bridget here today to talk a little bit more. Welcome, Bridget.
Thanks, Jessica. Happy to be here.
So can you start out just by sharing who is Power TakeOff and how did the firm get started in this space?
Yes, absolutely. So Power TakeOff delivers utility-funded virtual commissioning programs, which we'll unpack a little bit more in a moment about what that is, across the United States. So we primarily work with commercial real estate, and we essentially improve net operating income and increase the asset value. And we do this by identifying and rectifying energy waste through analyzing utility smart meter data. And we work with asset owners and property managers to optimize their existing building environment and controls to reduce electricity costs and scope 1 and 2 emissions. So really our vision as a company is to champion data-driven solutions to the climate crisis. And as a business, we were formed by several former utility product developers about 20 years ago. So we have been around for a while. And the product developers identified an opportunity to use electricity meter data at a larger scale to help businesses and public institutions make more informed energy efficiency investment decisions and operational changes within their building systems. So we first started contracting with Xcel Energy, electricity distribution company, and we provided a software that provided all of this data to their customers. And whilst data is so powerful and so helpful, we learned that pretty early on, most people don't have the time or training to look at 15-minute interval data. And to give you an idea, in a 1-year period, we're talking about over 500,000 meter data points that our customers are having to analyze. So fast forward a little bit to 2016, we started working with ComEd, an electricity distribution company in Illinois, and launched a new program design concept that we created. And we essentially flipped our previous model around. And rather than providing data for customers to decipher on their own, our team provided the data analytics and analysis in-house to identify specific buildings that exhibited energy usage outside of the typical norm, what we would expect for that type of environment and operating conditions, and then delivered personalized energy consulting, which is all paid for by the utility partners to asset and owners and occupants of those buildings. So by doing this, we're able to help properties yield around 15% savings on average in terms of energy reduction from no-cost operational adjustments. And then on top of that 15% energy reduction, we also found additional cost reduction from reduced maintenance cycles and costs. And then in many cases, having those savings fund equipment upgrades or accelerate equipment replacement programs to further lower their carbon emissions from that product. And then from there, it really grew. So fast forward to today, a little bit of our background, but fast forward to today, we partner with nearly 30 utilities across the country. And last year alone, we identified and rectified 115 gigawatt hours of energy waste, or 43,700 metric tons of carbon emissions reduced, working with thousands of commercial properties across the country through these utility-funded programs that we deliver.
Awesome. And I love really hitting on a few important things there, right? Data-driven decision-making, partnership with utilities, identifying the opportunities across the built environment. Can you talk a little bit more about how the virtual commissioning program works? What can you expect if you're part of this? And also, what makes it different? I want to hone in on the fact that this is free to the building owner and what makes it different from other commissioning programs that they might be familiar with or folks in the REIT community currently might be working with.
Yes, and that is a good point that I'll touch on because there's many grants and rebates and programs around, so I'll definitely go into that. So virtual commissioning, or for short, we call it VCX, is a utility-funded program designed to help non-residential customers, so again, primarily commercial real estate and industrial, and through that remote analysis of smart meter data by our team of experienced energy advisors, we'll identify areas of energy waste. So it might be abnormalities in usage. And then we're really looking at optimizing the systems and controls on site within the building. So for a single property or even a portfolio of property, in the case of REITs, VCX can reduce electricity costs. Like on average, across the thousands of buildings we've worked with, the average is around a 15% reduction per property. We're reducing those scope 1 and 2 emissions, which is now feeding into compliance reporting and sustainability benchmark reporting, BPS compliance as a result. We're improving the net operating income, which I touched on before, and asset value, and capturing all of these savings through the virtual analysis. And I'll walk through our process in a moment. And this is distinct. It's not a retro commissioning program. So we're not advising on capital upgrades. We're not installing anything on the property or the building. This is all done virtually and remotely. And we're really looking to lower the emissions where there's usage identified that is outside of the norm. So we'll analyze the utility smart meter data. And as I said, we're looking for those abnormalities in usage. And as an example, this could be a commercial office building with the operating hours of 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And in analyzing the smart meter data, we see that the electrical load of the property doesn't decrease that much overnight when the building is largely unoccupied. There may be cleaning or maintenance staff in the building, but we're seeing a high base load. So one of our energy advisors would schedule a virtual consultation. So again, we're not going on site. Would meet with a property manager, a facilities manager, or an engineer on site to understand the building under operations. What are the operating hours? What does the tenancy look like? What activities are happening inside the building? What systems and equipment do they have, such as HVAC or RTUs, building automation systems, EMS, boilers, chillers, etc. So we're trying to get a good lay of the land of the energy environment within the building. And then based on the understanding of the building systems and controls and the settings and schedules in place, that's important to highlight, we'll provide a recommendation to address the energy waste that we've detected. So it could be as simple as set point adjustments or schedule changes that align more with the building occupied and unoccupied times. And we're following industry best practice when we're providing those recommendations, and also keeping in mind the tenants and the activities that are going on, because the comfort of the tenants or the occupants is important when making these changes as well. We do have an engineering team that can get quite complex and technical with really specific, unique pieces of equipment. And when we're doing that, we're really looking to maximize the efficiency of the existing equipment. But largely, I'd say the bulk of the changes is around set points and schedules with those existing controls. So we'd advise on some recommended changes. The customer would confirm that they've made those changes. And then because we've got a live feed of their smart meter data directly from the utility, we monitor that through a very rigorous measurement and verification process for a good part of the year. And what we're doing is monitoring to make sure that the change that we recommended and advised on is persisting. We want to see that KWH has dropped and that abnormality that we identified has been addressed as a result of our intervention and advice. So once we're confident that change has persisted, we provide the customer with a participation report, which just details, this is what we discovered together, this is a change, and as a result, this is a KWH reduction, the financial savings for that building and that customer as well. And we submit that to our utility client because the utilities want to help their customers be using energy more efficiently. So we'll submit that to our utility customer to close the loop. So it's pretty straightforward. There is no contracts involved for the building owner, the property manager, the tenant. You don't need to have contracts inside because our contract is with the utility client. And again, it is a free service funded by the utility. So you get your utility bill as a building owner or a tenant, you'd see other line items. In one of those line items, you're paying for these types of programs. So it's a free service that you're probably already paying for. And even if buildings feel like they've got a really optimal schedule and they've got all of the settings in place, we can always do a health check and just confirm based on the smart meter data and our analytics, yes, that is, you're doing a great job. Or we might be able to find a 1% improvement, which would also be helpful. So it's really, we're providing an operational tune-up. And again, this is very different and distinct from other retrofitting programs or equipment replacing. And we're not touching any hardware or any capital upgrades. We're optimizing that existing environment.
One of the things that when I heard about this program, I really felt like, wow, I want to get this word out that this is something that's available, is what you just touched on, right? No contract required with the building owner and no data transfer either. You're already receiving the integral data directly from the utilities. I think that's huge to be able to get this free advice that's available to you without a lot of effort having to be put in by the building owner.
Yes, I know. And getting access to data is the number one challenge across the tenant, property manager, building owner, and we have that data. And then we can work with the right contact on site that's got access to those controls and systems to make those adjustments that really result in a significant saving in most cases.
So how can a REIT determine if they're a good candidate for this program?
Yeah, so if the annual consumption of the building is over 50,000 kilowatt hours, so the annual consumption, that's probably a good flag. The building is a commercial or industrial property. So we do a lot of work with commercial office, retail, banks, multipurpose, also schools and municipal buildings as well. And if the building is operating, say like somewhere between 8 to 16 hours a day as well, so we can see a nice load profile of when the building is occupied versus unoccupied. That's where we usually see some efficiencies. And then if the building has some adjustable thermostats or lighting controls, EMS or building automation systems, and other controls in the building that we could advise on adjustments to identify some savings there. The final criteria would be not all utilities offer this utility-funded program. We are working with all of them. And because it is funded by the utility, there is a process for utilities to get funding through their rate filings to provide this to their business customers. So we'd have to check that the program is supported through the utility in that building location. So we do work with a lot of utilities on the East Coast, so New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, down to South Carolina, Georgia, across to Washington, Arizona, also Oklahoma recently as well. But it's supported by about 30 utilities, but we're onboarding more and more each year, which is great to see. And yeah, I think from a REIT side, if you're looking at improving net operating income, improving asset value, maybe you want to free up some cash to fund other capital upgrades, like this would be a really good program where we can identify savings. And typically we're working with a customer over just a couple of meetings, maybe it's 2 to 4 hours of time commitment really, and the customer or that building starts seeing savings immediately. So I'd say that's identifying too. If there's some of the priorities of REITs on the community, definitely something we could support with.
Yeah, and I just wanted to point out, you didn't mention residential. That's a different program. So multifamily buildings would not be eligible for this program, just commercial, but there may be other residentially focused programs out there.
Yes, so that is a really good call out. Yes, this is geared to non-residential, so not multifamily, unfortunately, but yeah, more commercial industrial. Utilities quite often have some heavy residential or multifamily programs, and if you contacted the utility directly, they could refer you to those programs. But this virtual commissioning program is purely focused on non-residential. That's right.
What success stories have you had so far? Can you share some of what you've been working on and what's been going well?
Yes. So we've worked over the years. VCX as a program has been around for nearly 10 years now, since those early days with ComEd in Illinois. And they're still a great client today. So working over thousands of properties, there's a lot of success stories. And we've quoted the 15% on average savings. We've had some savings go much higher than that. But a couple of examples that really stand out. I was talking to one of our property management partners, and we worked with them on a number of their properties in Washington. And he sent an email to say, we just received compliance to the clean building performance standards that they're going to have to be in effect by, I think it's end of June this year, 2026. And so we put those buildings through virtual commissioning and found some efficiencies. They got some energy reduction, and that was one step to them achieving that compliance. So that was great to hear that feedback. And another REIT partner we support with a portfolio of properties through virtual commissioning. We worked on one of their properties in North Carolina, so a 20-story commercial office building, around 550, 560, 100,000 square feet. We worked with the building engineer there, and we shared some of the abnormalities we were seeing in their smart meter data. So we're seeing some large spikes upon what looked out to be the startup, and the overnight base loads were quite high when the building was typically unoccupied. And in working with that engineer, we found out that boilers were set to turn on even during milder temperatures, which did explain the large spikes that we saw. And then over the summer, there was periods of constant usage, which was an indication. And then as we drilled into, we found out setback temperatures weren't setting back overnight. And so after understanding sort of the occupancy in the system, we created a plan with the building engineer to reduce the boiler use in the winter and limit that continuous overnight usage in summer. And the engineer made some adjustments in the building management system. So lowered the boiler lockout temperature, increased chiller lockout temperatures. We implemented an extreme weather plan for extreme heat days. So when you did need that extra cooling, then there would be a program that would cater for that, but that was dealt with more as an exception rather than the norm. And then we staggered equipment startups to manage the peak demand. And the demand charges can be a large line item on the utility bill for these properties. So all of that required no capital investment, and we still worked with them to make sure that occupant comfort was maintained. But overall, in that situation, I think that's a good example, there was just over $88,000 in annual savings. So they were happy. They were able to improve net operating income. And in terms of improving asset value, that increased by $1.25 million. So that was net operating income capitalized at a 7% cap rate. So that was significant. And then on top of that, we reduced the maintenance cost and deferred some capital replacement costs, which saved the property an additional $13,000. So that was a great success story. We have a case study on it. The REIT partner was very grateful that they were able to access the program, achieve this result with pretty low touch. I think that was 2 meetings with that engineer. And so the time commitment on the REIT side, it's not a huge time commitment. It is typically 2 to 4 hours, 1 or 2 meetings, virtual. We'll provide recommendations. We'll monitor it on the back end. We'll get in contact if we see any drift from the savings that we identified and work to rectify it. But these changes should last for life, but they should have a useful life for at least 7 to 10 years that we're advising on just through that initial consultation and advice.
That's amazing. And I think that as sustainability and property management and engineering teams are stretched thin, we have so much to focus on and a lot of competing priorities. This is a great opportunity. Like you said, the commitment is about 2 to 4 hours of meeting time, maybe, a little bit of time to make the changes. It's not a huge undertaking that is going to require a lot of administrative and technical time that is taken out of the day.
Yeah, that's right. And for when we're working with a portfolio too, we are an extension of their energy team or property team. So we might have a regular cadence to check in once a month, and we're surfacing new properties that have popped up based on our analysis. What's happening at this property here looks like there's a large spike or constant usage. How can we address that? So there are regular cadence that just really complements our existing energy programs. So
you guys have the data. You're able to not only dig in on the buildings that you're working on, but also identify anomalies in areas that you could expand across the portfolio. So that I love that thinking of kind of an extension of the energy management team, or for a lot of smaller REITs that might not have an energy management team, this team of experts that can be that extension and that support.
In fact, we do work with some Nareit members in that capacity where they don't have a dedicated energy management team. So we're partnering with their property managers and helping them identify and work with their facilities team to adjust controls.
Okay, so REITs that are interested in learning more, they listen to this, sounds great. They want to see if there's an opportunity for them. What should they do next?
Yes. So it should sound great because it is free. It's utility funded. There is no catch. But anyone in the Nareit community listening, if you're interested to find out more, you can look at our website. So it's powertakeoff.com. And this provides more information about the virtual commissioning program. And we do have some other utility programs that go into a little bit more depth, and VCX is probably most appropriate. But there is more information on our website. I'll provide my email address as well. I head up our partnerships here, and we partner with a lot of commercial real estate and also national brands as well to support their portfolios across the country. So yeah, we're happy to have a chat, look at your portfolio, let you know which utilities support your assets, and surface some higher property, like priority opportunities to find some savings.
Thank you so much for coming on, sharing this opportunity with our REIT community. I really look forward to hearing how things go as you continue to expand the program. We love partnering with utilities to work together to add resilience to the grid and control things that are per the cost and the availability of energy. We really see as a partnership between utilities and building owners. And this sounds like a great program to really advance that, working together on a common issue.
Yeah, it is. And I think there's so many challenges in the energy efficiency space, and the way we get there is by partnering. So that's what I love doing. And I think this program does too, bring together utilities, clients, tenants, and centralizing, trying to make progress in the most efficient way possible.
Thank you for being here today on the REIT Report. If you enjoyed this discussion, please like and subscribe to the REIT Report, where Nareit is bringing interviews with real estate industry experts. And if you're interested in real estate sustainability, I encourage you to go to REIT.com sustainability and look at more of the programs we have to support the REIT community in efforts around sustainability.